Part 2. So I noticed my best friend sent my fiance a picture and he was in the bathroom, so I went ahead and opened the picture. You guys, it was a selfie of her wrapped in a towel fresh out of the shower. So of course I show it to him and he's like, oh my god, why would she send that? He totally played it off like he had no idea why she would send that to him. So I call my best friend and I say, hey, did you just send my fiance this picture? She hesitated for a second and then she's like, oh my god, please don't tell me I sent him the picture by mistake. And I was like, yeah, you sent him a picture of you in a towel. And she said, I'm so mortified, I'm so sorry, I meant to send it to somebody else. And then she's like, you believe me, right? And part of me didn't want to, but part of me had to. I couldn't believe that my best friend would do that. So I said, yeah, of course I believe you. And she completely changed the subject and told me about the guy that she was currently seeing, who she actually meant to send the picture to. A few weeks passed by and my fiance says he has to go on a work trip. Weirdly enough, she said she was going to go on a trip with a guy that she had just met. I asked her to meet the guy before they actually went on a trip and she said no because he's really shy. Can you believe they went on this trip together? Come back for part 3. Part 3. So my best friend and my fiance go on a trip by themselves behind my back. The whole time they were on their trips, I thought he was on a work trip and I thought she was with some dude. Because of the time difference, my fiance kept saying that he couldn't FaceTime, so we would just talk on the phone. The conversations were really short and he was acting really strange. He told me he was on a work trip to London, and because the whole thing felt so strange, I decided to call his mom. So I call her and I'm like, hey, where did he travel to again? And she replied, Aruba. I didn't say anything to her and I just got off the phone. I knew he was lying. And I knew my best friend was in Aruba. I connected the dots and realized they were both on a vacation together. The day that he was supposed to fly in, I showed up to the airport knowing that he was coming from Aruba. And I see them walking out to arrivals hand in hand. They saw me right away, and my best friend literally ran away. That's when he told me that he no longer wanted to be with me and that he wanted to be with my best friend. I had already paid for the wedding. He was such a coward. 2 months later, I found out she cheated on him, and he came back to me. I said no. Story time about when my mom caught me doing it with my best friend. I was 16 at the time, and there was this new boy that moved in across the street from us. He was super cute, and I noticed him right away. My parents were super strict. I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend or even any guy friends, and I knew right away that I wanted to at least become this guy's friend because he was so cute. So one day I told my mom, hey, why don't we take cookies or something to welcome the new neighbors in town? And my mom was like, that's a great idea. So we end up going over and we meet them. They're really nice. And the cute boy comes downstairs and he tells his mom he's going to go to Bible study. Well, when we get home, I tell my mom, hey, you know what? Maybe I should join a Bible study group too. And my mom was like, great idea. She even told me to go ask him about it since he had mentioned it. One day he's mowing the lawn, so I decided to go talk to him and ask him about the Bible study group. He actually ended up taking me there that same day and we had a fun class. Over the next few weeks, we became really, really good friends. Best friends. We told each other everything. But there was always attraction between. Part 2. So my neighbor, I'll call him Curtis, we're really good friends at this point, but we were always attracted to each other, but because we were in Bible study together and our parents were very religious, we kind of tried to stay away from anything. One day we're in my house chilling in my room because I knew my mom wouldn't be home for a while, so I told him to just come upstairs. We ended up eating Pop-Tarts and watching a Netflix show. The whole time I was mustering the courage to tell him that I really liked him because I really felt that I wanted to be honest with him instead of just lying to him, and the whole reason why I even got into the Bible study group was to be with him, or at least spend time with him. So finally, I just blurted it out. I said, I like you, and I like you like a lot. He just stares at me blankly. He doesn't know what to say, and I could tell that he was kind of nervous. So I said, do you like me too? He said, yes, you know that I do. And then we started making out. This was the first time I'd ever been kissed, and it was the first time I'd ever had a boy in my room by myself. I kept thinking my mom could come home at any moment, so I told him that he should go home. Suddenly, we're on my bed, and we're doing things that I'd never done before. Suddenly, my door swings open, and guess who it is? Part 3. So my mom swings the door open, and she sees us on my bed doing stuff. Of course, I'm mortified. I'm super embarrassed. I'm also embarrassed because I know how she's going to react in front of him. My mom, of course, just starts yelling her head off. Then we walk over to his house. She proceeds to tell his mom what we did. And then 5 minutes later, my dad walks into their house. I was really afraid of my dad. So now we're in their kitchen, and his parents and my parents are just staring us down and telling us that what we did was completely wrong. Then my dad starts saying that we need to get married. I can tell Curtis is freaking out. Of course, I'm freaking out too. His parents actually agree that we should get married. Thankfully, my mom was completely against it and she said absolutely not, they're too young. I literally felt like I was dying. I was obviously grounded for months, couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't do anything, and I obviously didn't speak to Curtis again. Then my mom tells me that Curtis and his family actually moved away. My heart was completely broken. A few years later in college, I contacted him through Facebook. We met up and we've been together ever since. I knew that our connection back then was super strong, and it is now. Part 2 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my husband was always traveling for work. So my stepson and I would be alone in the house a lot. One night we were watching a movie and it just happened. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other. He even started skipping class so that he could spend more time with me. We basically turned into boyfriend and girlfriend when my husband wasn't there. When my husband would come home from his work trips, we would pretend like everything was normal. One day after my husband got back from one of his work trips, he found one of his son's socks in our bed. He asked me how it got there, but I told him it probably got stuck in there while I was washing the sheets. A few months passed by and my stepson and I are still hooking up. This is when I realized that I hadn't gotten my period in a few months. My period was always irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. My stepson went to the pharmacy to get me a pregnancy test. It came out positive. But the big problem is that my husband can't have children anymore. How was I going to explain this to my husband when he couldn't have kids? Part 3 is up. Part 3 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My stepson and I take the pregnancy test and it turns out it was positive. Well, I told my stepson that his dad wasn't able to have kids anymore. That's when he really flipped out. Then he tells me we should just tell his dad the truth. I told him let's not do anything until we actually confirm that I'm pregnant. We go to the doctor the next day and it turns out I'm not pregnant. But this made me realize that we needed to end the affair. Once we got home, I told him we needed to break things off. He begged me not to and we went to his bedroom. Not even 2 minutes later, his mother walks in. She catches us on his bed. She nearly has a heart attack, calls his dad and tells him everything. She took him out of the house and told me never to see him again. When my husband came back from his trip, he made me promise not to see my stepson again. I told him we should get a divorce, but he said no. Then he confessed to me that he's been having an affair too. Now he doesn't even let me leave the house anymore. I want a divorce. What should I do? Story time about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband actually cheated on his wife with me. I started working at his company when I was 18. We started an affair and I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was very broke. He offered me a wealthy lifestyle and believe it or not, we fell in love. So when he and I got married, I was still 18. He was much older than me. He was 42. Everyone in town, of course, started hating me because I broke up the family. His wife couldn't even see my face. My husband already had 2 kids when we got married. One was 12, one was 15. So they were much closer in age to me than he was. The kids and I got along super well. I was their cool stepmom and we had a lot of fun. When I turned 20, the oldest boy came to live with us. And I think you already know what happens. My husband was always traveling for work. That means my stepson and I would be home alone most of the time. One night we decided to watch a movie and before I knew it, we were making out on the couch. From then, we basically started an affair behind my husband's back. Part 2 is up. My best friend's boyfriend had broken up with her because of me. I didn't have the heart to tell her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. A few days later, she started going out on Tinder dates again. I could see that she was feeling better, so I decided to confess to her everything. And she told me she could tell that he and I liked each other. Then she told me I should date him. Well, I didn't waste any time. I sent him a text message and asked him if he wanted to meet up for dinner. And when we did, he asked me to be his girlfriend. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. He even got my name tattooed on his neck. The only problem is that my mom thinks he might do the same thing to me. I don't even want to think about that because I truly believe that he loves me. But let's hope not. I've been planning the wedding and I asked my best friend to come. Of course she said yes. She's super happy for me. And she actually has a boyfriend now. Do you guys think my fiance will end up doing the same thing to me? My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together. And I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really guilty and I told him one day I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I got a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I caught my husband cheating on me with a neighbor. My husband is a really rich guy. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I first met my husband when I was 20 years old and he was 10 years older than me. He was basically my sugar daddy. Once I graduated college, he asked me to work at his company. I did all of the marketing. But eventually we wanted to have kids, so we decided to move to a bigger house. We ended up moving to a really secluded neighborhood with lots of rich families. One of our neighbors owned a yoga studio. There was also a young couple living across the street from us and they were also business owners. It was the perfect situation until I noticed that my husband was paying less and less attention to me. Well, I didn't hesitate to ask him why. He denied it and said that I was making things up in my head. So I installed an app in his phone that would send all of his text messages and emails straight to my phone. And guess what I saw? Text messages between him and the neighbor who owned the yoga studio. She was 10 years older than my husband, so I never saw it coming. I started collecting all the evidence into folders, pictures, and text messages. I wanted to catch him in the act. So one day I said I was going to a spa for the entire day. Part 2 is I told my husband I was going to be at the spa all day long. I wanted to see if he was going to bring the neighbor around to cheat on me some more. When I got in the car to leave, I get a message that he sent to the neighbor. Like I said, I had planted an app in his phone, so I was receiving all the messages he was sending and receiving. And of course, he sends her a message saying, hey, my wife's going to be at the spa all day. We're free. And she replies saying, perfect, I'll come over. My stomach dropped. I drove around for a bit and waited for her to get to my house. Then I see she sends him a message saying she's there. That was my cue to go back to my house to catch him in the act. I race back and enter the house super quietly. I go into the living room and don't see anything, so I assumed they were in our bedroom. I go up to the bedroom and no one's there. And I see they're in the backyard in the pool. I pull out my phone and press record. I run downstairs and I surprise them in the act. They were both naked and my husband jumps out of the pool and wraps himself in a towel. Our neighbor stays in the pool. My husband says, I was gonna tell you, I swear. It gets worse. Part 3 is up. I catch my husband doing dirty things in the pool with our neighbor. I'm recording all of this, by the way. He says he was gonna tell me. So I show him all the evidence that I had been gathering, all the messages and the pictures. But little did he know I had already hired a lawyer. I'd known about the affair for about a month at this point. I had already been working on the divorce with the lawyer, documenting every single transgression my husband committed against me with our neighbor. And when I told my husband, he freaked. The neighbor, aka the woman my husband was with, she got out of the pool and went home. I printed out some flyers with all the pictures she had sent my husband and spread them around her yoga studio. I now get $10,000 from my husband monthly. Story time about how my fiance broke off our wedding because of my best friend. My fiance and I had been together for 2 years, but my best friend and I had been friends for over 8 years, so I trusted her with my life. When my fiance and I met, she approved and she loved him. She was always looking for a new relationship because she could never commit to anyone. Eventually, I started feeling like she was envious of the relationship because I had found someone that I truly loved and that wanted to marry me. On the other hand, she was a